Hi, welcome back to the Sales Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Ingram. Today, we're excited to have Jason Pierret, a powerhouse in revenue growth and sales strategy, join us. Jason is the CEO and founder of Alpha Brand. He's also a remarkable history of driving explosive growth for business to business, for those of us that do that, and business to consumer companies through innovative go-to-marketing strategies. In this episode that we titled Nobody Wants to Be Sold, but Everyone Likes to Buy, the Masterclass in Social Selling, Jason will share his expertise in connecting with customers in a way that builds trust and drives results. So get ready to learn from one of the best in the business on how to elevate your sales and marketing efforts to new heights and actually try to capitalize on your social media. Come on, let's get it done.
This podcast is for the sales professionals at every level. If you want to convert more prospects into paying customers, then you're in the right place. Because Joe has spent the last 3 decades mastering buying behaviors, personality types, emotional and logical triggers. This is the Sales Genius Podcast. It's only a numbers game if you want educated. It's time to get educated. Let's go. Educated. Wanna learn how to close deals. Wanna learn how to sell more. That's what we're here for at Sales Genius. Let's go.
Man, I just love that jam. That's Joey Mack. Let's bring up some VIPs. Neda is in the house. Sarari is in the house. JR came with us. Jessica pulling up. We got Coach Dan Gordon with us. Brian Galkey's there, but he stepped off the screen. But look, everybody, there's his house. And now we're back. Okay? Just don't want to leave it too professional for everybody. Jason Pierret, I would love to have you come up on the screen. Welcome. I'm going to shift us all around. I'm going to go here and then say, no, Jason, you come over here with us. You're going to get the big screen that's there. So welcome, Jason. Appreciate you taking time to come spend some time on the Sales Genius podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks for having me. And you're right, man. I was bopping to that intro, man. Like that thing is, I'm probably going to steal it for my ringtone if we're being honest.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. Yes. So I had early on in my podcast, I got introduced to Joey Mack, and he does all of these musical things, and he does advertising and viral videos. And so I got introduced to him with Troy Hoffman, and I was like, really? And he goes, come on, what do you got? And I gave him the intro that's written, and he put it all into music and made that. And then I've been doing everything per my private Facebook group called War Games. And I was like, you know what? We're just branding Sales Genius because somebody went out there and evaluated the show and was like, I'm confused. Is it War Games or is it Sales Genius? I'm like, it clearly says that it's the War Games group and the excerpts are on the Sales Genius podcast, but not. We also got Bob Donnell joined us. Welcome, Bob Donnell.
Hey, brother.
Next level, Bob.
Hello, everyone.
All right, fantastic. So, Jason, I'm going to throw out one question just to get us started before you get going because it's my show. I can do that, right? So,
hey, that's perfect. Yeah, it is your show. Let's do it.
Yes. So, okay, you have helped, right, companies and people, right, through a series of growth initiatives, right, across different industries. What do you think is the key to effective social selling, right? And how can a business use it to drive results?
Man, super great question, Joe. Already, man, from the top. So, I think that the key to great social selling is making sure that you've got a couple of things done really well. I think the first thing is that people have to know who you are and how you relate to a company that can solve their problem, right? So I think that's priority number one. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that we see that companies are making there with that is they've got people and the people are cool. They've got cool stuff happening from the company, but those two things are not stitched together. And so there's a disconnect and companies are missing a huge opportunity. The other thing is, in order to be successful at social selling, it's more about how you build relationships than it is about pounding people with sales related jargon, right? So the second biggest mistake that we typically see companies make on social media with social selling is it's just sales post after sales post after sales post. Hey, if this is the problem that you have, come at us, come see us, right? Email us here. And that's a big issue because, people feel like they're getting pitched at every turn. And like we talked about, everybody loves to buy, but nobody likes to get sold.
Fantastic. Okay. So your expertise selling on social. My question to you is, I'm giving you my audience, a whole group of people, basically on the screen, we're slammed. But when you look at it, there's the people watching, people are going to check out the replay. And I want them to walk away with the thought of a masterclass, 1 or 2 things that you can drop on them so they can stop screwing up the social selling, right? We got the first little nugget where you said, stop making it problem. We solve. So, and then I just want to know for myself, and then I'll also say for Brian, because Brian always wants to know what I know. So we can do that. So what do you think?
Yeah. Hey, so I've got 3 nuggets that you guys will walk away from this show, from this podcast with, right? I think number 1 is we're going to talk about profile optimization. That is first and foremost super important. Number 2, we're going to talk about content that connects. You've got to have content that connects to your audience in order to be successful. And then number 3, we are going to talk about messaging that matters. And if we align all 3 of those things together with some of the tips and tricks and insights that I give you today, then what you'll in effect be doing is building an ecosystem that you can invite your perfect fit customer into, and that will help you to sell more via social media.
Fantastic. Great. Would you like me to kick up this slide? Are we ready to go?
Let's kick it up. Let's do it.
All right, let's rock and roll. Everybody get your pens ready. Unless you're driving, don't do that.
Yeah, look, in full transparency, right? So Joe's talking to me and we're talking about the show and how I'm going to come on and stuff. And I was like, hey, man, do I need a presentation? And he goes, well, I mean, I like to use a presentation or a PDF when I do it. And so in true Joe fashion, I threw a presentation together so that you guys could have some good takeaways. So that's exactly what's going on here. Okay, so Joe introed me. And what I'd love to share in addition to that is that I've spent 20 years in the marketing industry, on the sales side of the marketing industry. So I know sales, I know marketing. I've helped lead marketing agencies to a lot of success. Some of my former clients are companies like Tropical Smoothie Cafe and Pluralsight, which is a large company over in Utah. Freddy's Frozen Custard and Steak Burgers, right? Like, so large companies, 7- and 8-figure deals that we pulled together. And one of the things that honestly had the biggest impact on me starting conversations with those people, developing and building relationships with those people, and was instrumental in my go-to-market strategy at all of those agencies, was really the art of social selling. And so after I left my last agency, I had a decision to make, like we all do. Was I going to go and continue to be a W-2 and be a part of the leadership team, which I love? And I don't want to rule out the fact that, I don't know, I might do that again at some point in time. But I thought, you know what, there's no better time to open up my own shop and help as many companies as I possibly can figure out what I've figured out about go-to-market strategies, about marketing, about sales, about lead generation, about client acquisition. And so that's how Alpha Brand kind of came to be. And realistically, what I will share with you, and you guys may already know this, right? But what I'll share with you is really, I learned across my career that it only really takes 90 days to affect change in a company, right? So I don't know if we're talking about, hey, we need more clients. I don't know if we're talking about, man, nobody is connecting to our marketing. But it really only takes a 90-day sprint in order to completely transform the direction of a company. And so once I figured that out, what I really started to do in my own business was kind of build 90-day programs, right? Obviously, they can continue on beyond that, but really there's a 90-day foundational, we need to get all this stuff pulled together and done within 90 days. And when we do, magical things happen, right? So that's kind of where this stuff comes from. And we'll talk about the art of social selling. But before we talk about that, I think one of the things that we need to really kind of get a grasp on is like how many people in effect are really on these social media platforms, right? So Facebook, our old friend, right? You've got a group on Facebook. We're probably all on Facebook. And so
we're not happy about it. We're not happy about it, but we are. We're there. Yeah. Zuckerberg hates me.
No, look,
yeah.
I completely agree with you, man. So look, I created my Facebook account. I don't know. It was a long time ago. And to be fair, I am not a huge Facebook user. My wife is. She shares stuff about my kids on Facebook, and then I share her stuff. So I'm a sharer. Is that a thing? A
right.
sharer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, share squared, I believe, is what we call it. Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, but what I will also say is that, you know, Facebook is honestly a really interesting platform as it relates to connecting with people from a business perspective, right? So, look, there are all sorts of people in your audience. Probably some of them are B2B, some of them are probably B2C. And so I want to make this kind of agnostic, but what I'll say is this. There are 2.5 billion active users on the platform. And if you think about the messaging that you get, if you think about the way that people are connecting with you today, I bet you would probably say that very few businesses are actually outreaching to you on the platform, right? So there's a huge green space opportunity with Facebook, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, Instagram. We're all getting pretty familiar with Instagram, right? I think Reels revolutionized Instagram, and let's be fair, Reels was really just Instagram stealing TikTok strategy. But nonetheless, Instagram is budding and growing, and there are 2.4 billion active users on the platform. And here's my caveat. Almost no legitimate businesses are outreaching on the platform. I get a ton of stuff in my DMs, people asking, well, we don't want to talk about some of those, but the ones that I can talk about are the people who are, you know, offering to grow my following and telling me that they can, you know, 10x the number of followers and engagement I get and whatever, right? But none of that is really legitimate business outreach. So 2.4 billion people on the platform, another huge green space opportunity. And then obviously, Joe, I don't want to leave us B2B folks out, right? So small but mighty. I say small, 740 million is a lot, right? But my all-time favorite platform, really the backbone of my business, is LinkedIn. There are 740 million business decision makers on the platform. And because I'm actively on LinkedIn, because I help companies build client acquisition systems on LinkedIn, I know for a fact that there are only 2% of B2B service providers out there that are legitimately outreaching on the platform. So, you know, here's 3 platforms, here's 3 social networks, here's 3 networking opportunities. And all of those have got massive opportunities for us to connect with the right people.
I like that because at least one of them I'm not shadow banned or flagged on. So we'll stick with the 700. Good thing I'm business to business, so I can stay out on LinkedIn and make something happen. Yeah.
Jason, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, 100%.
What's like a big mistake that people make on LinkedIn? Right? I mean, like it's the classic, people send me messages all the time with all kinds of bullshit offers, but what's the big mistake that someone who's really trying to do something good on LinkedIn,
what's
the mistake that they're making?
That's fair. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that now.
Yeah.
So, Dan, what I would say is this, is that the biggest mistake that people make on LinkedIn is they treat LinkedIn like every other social media platform, right? So when we get into the nitty gritty about LinkedIn, right? And I'm super passionate about it. I'm on there all the time. And really, like I said, it's the backbone of how I connect with and engage with potential clients. But one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they treat LinkedIn like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and it's not, right? So if we think back to, and maybe some of your audience is not old enough to even know this, right? But when we think about,
thank you, Jason. Yes,
when LinkedIn initially came out, it was designed for people to connect with business leaders that they knew, right? So it was intended to be a networking platform, and really at its roots, LinkedIn is still that. Right. So it's a networking platform versus a social media platform. And so the benefit that brings is ultimately everybody on LinkedIn is business related. And if done correctly, you really have a good opportunity to network on LinkedIn at a massive scale, similar to the way that you might go to an in-person networking event in a city near you. Right. So if you can think about it like that, and you think about it as the world's largest networking event, and you approach LinkedIn in that way, then you'll absolutely find far more success than you would if you try to build in a social media marketing strategy on LinkedIn. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks.
Awesome.
I like it. And networking is still for amateurs, Bob. We got you. We know. Yes.
I know you said you'll get into the nitty gritty later, but I've been focusing on growing my LinkedIn, and with my engagement statistics, I noticed that I get more engagement when I post more personal things and not related to my business versus, I do project management. So everything about project management, I get a lot less engagement versus when I post more personal things. So what's your thought about that?
Yeah, so I think that there's a balance, right? And I think that, okay, so when I love this, I love we're going this direction. This is awesome. So okay, so think about it like this. So when you think about what the creator economy is doing today to social media, you've got guys like Alex Hormozy, and you've got guys like Dan Martell and Gary Vee, right? And they've got these huge followings. And so they are seeing massive success on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, right, as a carryover. And then you've got us normal business leaders, right? Well, I mean, except for Dr. JR, that guy is not normal, but
right. We don't go normal. No normal.
We've got most of us normal business leaders who are looking for a place to share our thought leadership. Okay. Now, because the creator economy is doing what it's doing on Instagram and TikTok, guys like, Gary Vee and Dan Martell are interlacing a level of personal with their business, right? Because that's super acceptable on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And so I think what we're seeing now is a desire on LinkedIn for people to do a little bit more of that, and people are craving it. And so the reason that you see a little bit more success with that is because people are down with it, right? Like they want to see some of your personal stuff because it helps to humanize you, right? And I've got some strategies for doing that, like in your headline and on your profile. But what I would ultimately say is people want to connect with and do business with people, and your personal content, right, sparingly or balanced out with the rest of the stuff that you're doing, helps people to understand that you're a real person who wants to develop a relationship with them.
So while we're talking about LinkedIn, I have a question also. It's my least growing platform. But so I'm taking shorts, killing it on Instagram, growing it on TikTok. LinkedIn seems to have very low. What I do see on LinkedIn is a lot more people doing static pictures and writing content. So are you a bigger fan of static photos and content, or articles or videos? What's your LinkedIn best results strategy?
Yeah, good question. So we'll get into some of the details of it, but like obviously off the cuff, I would love to answer this. So I do a couple of things where we see good success. The first thing is that I am a big fan of video on LinkedIn. But what I think about video on LinkedIn is it's in its infancy, right? So LinkedIn just recently, you may notice this in your LinkedIn app if you go there, right? And don't go there while we're talking because then it looks like you guys don't care about me. But, go there when we're done with this show. And what you'll notice is there's a video icon now on your LinkedIn down at the bottom of the page where you can click and you can kind of see a feed of videos just like you would Instagram Reels, right? So that is pretty new to LinkedIn now. The second thing that I'll say about that is actually their algorithm, from what we can tell, is actually slanting a little more towards video content. So much so, in fact, that like one of the ways that I see success in posts that I do is as opposed to posting like a static image, I'll actually go into Canva. I'll create a post that's got a quote on it from a post that I'm making. And then I'll drop B-roll video in the background. And that post, like words over B-roll video, will actually perform way better than some of my static picture posts. So I think that there's an opportunity, in fact, to kind of give the algorithm what it's looking for, which is, I think it historically has rewarded text and graphics like you're talking about. So take that text and graphic, drop a little B-roll in the background, and you can tap into the video aspect of the algorithm. And then, as the platform starts to catch up, I think we'll see the stuff that you're doing on Instagram with the reels and the shorts, right, on YouTube, being like having a little bit more traction as their algorithm kind of catches up.
Awesome.
I'd like to point out too, Jason, that I stayed on the show instead of going to go take that advice right now.
I love it, Joe. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm gone. Let's go over to Canva and take my quote from Facebook today and go put it out here. Yes. So honestly, I know what I'm going to see from Joe now, right? Like all of these clips that he's going to do, B-roll quotes on top of them. That's going to be Joe's new strategy. Yep. LinkedIn, baby. Yes. You know why? Because those people have jobs and money. That's what we like about them.
They do. Okay. And look, man, kind of side note as it relates to that is like I work with some B2B, some B2C companies. And as I'm working with those guys, they're talking to me about, man, we really want clients that have money, right? Like we want a lot of the people that we're getting are tire kickers, or they're only buying our product one time, right? Like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well then why don't we create a strategy for you on LinkedIn? Because then how you narrow in on that ideal client is they're a corporate executive. When was the last time you knew a corporate executive to not make at least six figures, if not multiple six figures, right? So if you're a B2C company and you're looking for high net worth clients, there's definitely an opportunity to kind of like adjust your offer to fit for LinkedIn in an authentic way.
I like it. Brian asked specifics.
Yeah,
tell him what you do.
I said I had to leave early, so I want to get my question in. And my only other question is,
you have 5 minutes. I'm telling you, go.
I know. Yeah. How are you guys going to sing happy birthday to Joe since his birthday was Sunday after I'm gone?
Yeah, no, it won't happen.
Yeah, we probably need to do that. I feel like
we could do it after the show because we don't want, the people listening to it a month from now will be like, what? Yeah, we don't get it. So the Spotify audience will be confused. So, but thank you. But no, so like, for example, I'm a consultant. So I go out I solicit companies. Brian is the same thing, but he's more of the speaker. So he can come in and revolutionize your sales department in one way. I do it multiple ways. Brian only has one. So that's the one way that he has. Yes. But so Saradi, this is the guy with the eyebrows and the facial stuff.
You became famous at the conference because after I spoke to Joe and he told me all about the reading with the eyebrows and we would just stare at people and he would question me when people would come up to us. like, okay, what do you tell me about their eyebrows? And they're so confused. They're like, what? What is happening right now?
I'm like,
Pleasure.
the guy speaking right now. What do you see? What do you see? Yes.
Oh, God.
So yeah, Brian pinged me and
images
he's like,
are
"Did
too
you steal my
small."
stick?" Yeah.
Yep.
So-
I saw people posting about he's stealing my job.
Yeah.
But I do have
was
to
like, I
run.
got
Thank
this.
you, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Brian. Hey, catch the rest of it,
Fantastic. Sorry, I'm gonna go back to let's have Jason go back to boom. All right,
Boom.
we're up to the
I
740
love this.
million.
What,
people
man,
that
you need
matter.
like a Steam Deck or something so that you can actually have a boom sound effect when you flip the presentation.
No. Okay, then I'm gonna have another crap ton of information from Brad Lee saying I'm stealing his shtick. Yes. He already accuses me for joining the Tuesday event that he does every Tuesday at 4:00. I'm part of the group, have been. I was the number 2 person he called to say, hey, I'm going to put this out. I was like, sure, I'll do it. And then every Tuesday he comes on and goes, well, Joe's only reason for being here is to get information for his own show. And I'm like, yeah, because you talked to Jason before. Yeah, no. Okay. But I go, no, Brad, I could never steal what you do. You're amazing. Yeah. And then we move on. So
yeah, I'm sure he loves that. He loves that.
He's a big fan of being poked fun at. Yes, you can imagine.
Now look at this, guys. I put pictures in and everything. Look at this thing, right?
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, look, man, I am no graphic designer, but I do know my way around a Canva, So, yeah. So we've been talking about the concept of social selling. We called this thing a masterclass in social selling. So it's only fair that we ask the question, right? Like, what is social selling? And I've got a real quick and easy, down and dirty definition for you, right? Social selling is a strategic method for sellers. And those sellers, right? Notice that the word sales is not in the rest of the definition. Those sellers are supposed to be connecting with and building relationships with prospects through social networks. So if you are on social media and you have been trying to promote and sell your business on social media and you've had mixed success, then I would, tell you that maybe you're not social selling, but instead you're social media marketing. Maybe you are making sales related outreach on social media, but you're not necessarily social selling, because social selling, the key differentiator is connecting and building relationships. And that is the way to see success in sales via social media. So, huge thing, huge differentiator. And I mean, are you guys want a little bit more? Because look,
I would like a little bit more, because I'm not a fan of the building relationship thing.
Okay. So look, it is, there are 3 things realistically that are non-negotiable for social selling. Number 1, your profile has got to be optimized. And so like I led off with, like I told you guys, like I'll talk to you a little bit about how we optimize a profile, but that is table stakes. Number 2, you have to be consistently posting content, right? And I've got a framework for that. We'll share the framework with your audience when we get down to the end of this thing, right? We'll tell them how they can tap into it. But, and I'll share the framework as we go along for those note takers. But consistently posting insightful, engaging content, right? And it's easier than it sounds, right? That is table stakes, non-negotiable for social selling. And then obviously the last piece that everybody thinks that they've mastered, they've gotten down, and they are doing is connecting with their potential customers, right? The problem is that when you connect before you have your profile optimized and before you are consistently posting content, you are 100% a taker and not a giver, right? And like the key to networking, whether it's in person or otherwise, right? Because again, we're thinking about this thing as we are doing the best that we can to attend the world's largest networking event and connect with as many people authentically as we can, right? The key to networking is to go in with a giver's mentality, not a taker. And so if I am your potential customer and before I know anything about you, I get pitch slapped in my DMs because I accepted your connection request or your friend request. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, guess what? I can save you 20% on your life insurance. Definitely let's have a conversation. I'm like, whoa, right? But if instead of that, you sent me a connection request and I was like, hey, what is Joe about? And all of a sudden I'm looking at that and I'm going, man, this content is cool, right? He's probably going to pitch me at some point in time, but that said, like, this content is of value to me. I really think that I can do something with it. Then I am much more likely to entertain your pitch, your connection, because you've provided me with value ahead of it. Does that line up?
Yeah, makes sense. So your content better be doing the start of relationship building for you.
Yeah, 100%. Right. So we'll talk about that. Like I've got a whole section on content, but like, let's start with the optimized profile, right? So
a lot of people are confused. I get the feeling, Jason.
Hey, look, if I have a slide with a question on it, there's got to be a
second picture of a confused person.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at those eyebrows.
Pondering the question.
Boom. Coach Dan Gordon coming in with the eyebrows and Brian's not here. So.
All right. So an optimized profile accomplishes three things. Who are you? What do you do? And who do you work with? Right? So if someone touches down on your profile, whether it's your Facebook profile, whether it's your Instagram profile, and especially if it's your LinkedIn profile, they should be able to determine who you are, what you do, and who you work with. And if they can't, that's fine. But at the same time, just know that you will have trouble selling from that profile, right? So one of the biggest questions I get is around like a Facebook profile. And they're all like, well, how do I do that on Facebook? And like, most of what I'm doing on Facebook is I'm sharing things from my wife, or like I'm sharing stuff about my family. But like, I have a ton of connections, a ton of friends on Facebook. And I'm like, okay, well, there are ways that you can adjust your profile just a little bit, so that people know that you have a company, that you're a consultant, that you offer specific services, right? And it doesn't have to overtake your profile. So let me show you what that looks like. Top left corner is my LinkedIn profile, okay? So there are three things in my LinkedIn profile. We'll talk about the best one first, because that's the one that's the most relevant to me and any B2B sellers. So you want to have a header banner that helps people to understand what you offer and how you can connect to them, right? Or how they can connect to you, right? So your header banner is like vital real estate on your profile. It takes up probably one of the healthiest parts of your profile at the very top. Everybody's going to see it. Super important. I would say the same thing is true on Facebook too, right? So you can see over on the right-hand side what I've done with my Facebook profile. I've got my company logo in there. If you scroll a little bit further down, but it wouldn't fit right in the presentation, it says that I'm the CEO and founder of Alpha Brand. It also has my speaker persona there, right? Like those kind of things. And so what I find in both of these cases is that if someone just happens to touch down on my profile without scrolling any further than the very top, it's easy for them to understand who I am, the company that I represent, and what I offer people who work with me.
Perfect.
The other thing that I'll touch on too, right? Like, so you can see down at the bottom is, that is my Instagram profile. My Instagram profile for my business is actually branded for the business. You can do the same thing from your personal profile, but like I wanted to show an example of, I've got a personal profile that typically tends to house most of my corporate speaking stuff and all of that. But like from a business perspective, I want people to know that they can tap into Alpha Brand, right? But I also want them to know that I'm just not like a faceless company. So what I've done is I've created a profile image that's got the company logo and it's got a headshot that's a part of it, because I only have like one profile picture. And so they know that there's a person there. And then, like what you'll notice is that you don't have a header banner opportunity in Instagram, but what you do have is the ability to convey that same information pretty succinctly across the 3-4 lines that they give you, right? So it's like, hey, this is what we do. This is our mission and how we help. and this is how you can get in touch with me, and then a link to however they can do that. In my particular case, right, like a lot of people use Linktree. I just want people to come to my website, fill out the website form, and then we can connect, right? So easy ways for people to understand, right, from an optimized profile perspective, who you are, what you do, and who you do it for, right? Like that's the name of the game, every profile. And you'll also notice too, right, like that if people come across me or like they connect with me across different platforms, that stuff is going to align because the headshot is the same or similar, right? So there's a really good opportunity for them to go, oh yeah, that's the guy where I saw this from Instagram, or that's the guy where I saw this from Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, right? Like we're stitching those things together so that people have the ability to understand from each one of those profiles a little bit of the story.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm really fighting the urge to go check all mine as you go through this. Okay. I just want to tell you right now. I'm like, oh, open another tab. Let's go get it. Yeah. So,
dude, I'm glad that you're not. I'm feeling very valued right now, Joe. Thank you so much for that.
Right.
You know? So the other piece that I'll add is that it is super duper important for you to create a customer narrative that your clients and customers can relate to. When we're talking about a LinkedIn profile, your about section should be your customer narrative, right? So nobody needs to know that you spent 20 years working for Apple and now you're doing your own thing and you were a President's Club Award winner and all these different kind of things, right? Like we have been conditioned to think that biography actually sells for us, when in fact what sells for you is a customer narrative that tells your ideal client like who you are and who you've helped and how you helped them and what the results were of that engagement. And so in the case of LinkedIn, that's your about section. When you're talking about Facebook and when you're talking about Instagram, those things can actually be pinned post, right? So that's a great way to attach some of that relevant information right to the very top of what you're doing on some of your profiles where you actually share that with personal stuff that you're doing. But the name of the game is really customer narrative helps you sell more than a biography about yourself does.
Jason, can you give an example of a customer narrative?
Yeah. Absolutely. Go to my LinkedIn profile. No, I'm just kidding.
No, yeah. Not to go to the social media. I'm just kidding.
Actually, like, let's talk about more about building a customer narrative. Like, like how would someone do that? Like, let's say someone is, I don't know, a great business coach who focuses on sales. I just pulled that like right out of the air.
Wow. Where did you get that from?
I don't know. Yeah. You know, I just have that.
Is he more of a badass though? This coach you're talking about?
Completely, right? And he says things like this. So how do you go about building that narrative? Where do you start?
Yeah. So I think that the best way to start is to think about your customers' pain points, right? So you've got an ideal client and they have got challenges that you typically help them to solve, right? So the way that I start every customer narrative is, are you or do you, and then those pain points, right? Do you suffer from, lagging sales, right? Are you wishing that your sales pipeline was about 5 times bigger than it is? Do you struggle to get potential new clients to acknowledge that your company is a thing, right? Like you want to lead off with those kind of questions that can connect to a challenge that somebody has, because then that hook of that challenge is going to keep them reading more, right? So that's number one. Number two in a customer narrative is you want to relate to the customer by saying something like, I've been there. I understand. I had that same problem. And, it was one of the hardest things that we overcame, but we did, right? You want to be able to relate to the customer so that they can understand that you're not preaching to them, but instead you're coming from a place of understanding. That's going to help them to get into the meat of it, which is, this is what we do, how we solved that problem that we just told you that we had, and something that we can make available to you so that you can solve that problem too, right?
So so sort of like, hey, does sales rejection freak you out? You're not alone. I was there too. I've helped over 1,000 people, know how to enter into a sales conversation where they feel really confident. Is this the kind of narrative that we're talking about?
Yep, 100%. And what I would attach to that is, and we do that through a framework or a blueprint that we call X. And the tenets of that blueprint are A, B, C, D, right? So whatever the 4 or 5 main value points that you drive home with every one of your clients is, right? You want to make sure that they're going, oh yeah, okay, great. Like, I would love if we could get A, B, C, and D, right? Like, we'll streamline your sales process. We'll make sure that you have a real unique selling proposition and not just something that looks good on a napkin, right? Like these kind of things. And then the last thing, right? So you've totally understood it. The last thing is you want to add in a little bit of social proof, right? And so if there are customers that you've worked with, and we all know this, right? Like we've been taught this time and again, but like, at the end of a customer narrative is, don't just take my word for it. Sharon at XYZ company or at this type of company says that I am the greatest sales coach to ever live, and Joe Ingram is nobody, right? Like all of a sudden that's in your customer narrative, and people are definitely gonna follow through, right? So
you'll probably get flagged on LinkedIn by me, but yeah, other than that, you're good. Yeah.
Now don't say that about my friend Joe Ingram. I'll give you a bunch of things you can say about him later.
Right. Yeah. Way more accurate than that one.
Like, good guy. Okay. So great. Thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to AI this, right? I'm
100%.
so building a prompt for this and taking it from my website with the customer, stuff. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Look, so that's honestly, the secret sauce in all of this stuff is that AI is probably one of your best assistants, right? Like you don't ever want to take AI at face value, but if you will build a prompt for ChatGPT that says, hey, Chat, I am trying to build a customer narrative, and I would love for you to ask me, 10 questions about my business that will help you to better understand what we do, who we help, and all of that, so that I can build the right customer narrative, then that is a great way to do that. So it asks you questions, and then you want it to then suggest, right, like how that kind of stuff will interlace and come together. And then you want to finesse that in a way that feels authentic to you. Because one of the biggest challenges that we have with AI today is that it doesn't really understand tone of voice or your voice as a person in business very well. And so AI doesn't do great at that, but you do.
Love it.
So just
and I can build you all the prompts around all that. Go for it. Yeah.
I have a quick question. As far as the customer narrative that is living on our social media platforms, obviously they all look different. How do you see the customer narrative? Because in my mind, I was thinking it's in the bio, but then based off of what you mentioned, that's a lot longer than what a bio would probably be as far as trying to fit all that in. Like, I'm just thinking Instagram, right? Or even TikTok. Like how do you, maybe you're getting to it, but
look, three ways to attack it. So number one, on LinkedIn, it's in your about section, right? So you have 2,600 characters in your about section that you can dedicate to your customer narrative, right? So that's actually, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, linkedin.com/n/Jason Pierret, right? If you go there and you look at mine, that's all 2,600 characters utilized, right? So that's number one. When you think about Facebook and Instagram, what I would really do is I would pin those as posts at the top of your Facebook or Instagram profile, right? Okay. So it'll be the very first post that somebody sees. On Instagram, I would also recommend that your customer narrative potentially be a video, because that actually trends so well on social media, right? On Instagram. So, if your pinned post is you talking about your customer narrative, right? If what you're saying is, hey, hi, this is, who I am. And I just wanted to talk to those people who struggle with X, Y, and Z, right? You just kind of walk through that thing. That is a great way to have a really impactful customer narrative tied to your Instagram or Facebook profile.
Love it. Okay. That answers my question.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for dropping my LinkedIn in there, man. I hope I'm going to see some new connection requests. I love that. Thanks, Joe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so we gotta move a little bit quicker. I feel like this is Joe's show, but like all of a sudden these people are gonna go, man, I'm gonna miss my next meeting. So I've got 2 more things I want to deliver for you guys. One is, and hey, it's your show, man. We can go 2 hours if you want. That's fine.
Yeah, we won't. No. we'll leave them wanting more before we do that. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. So look, you may be asking yourself, what is content that connects? Because content is one of those things that I was talking about and is super important. And I've got a really easy framework. But I think we all know that people only buy from people that they know, like, and trust, right? We've heard that a lot. There's a ton of people who talk through that. I have found that to be true in my own life, right? Like with companies I partner with and things that I do. And so what we need to do is create content that'll help us to accomplish that. And the way that we do that is with 3 different types of posts, right? So what I'll say is that the media that's attached to these posts can vary. Whether you want to attach a picture to it, whether you want to use short form video that's clips from podcasts, whether you want to create video where you're just straight talking one-to-one with the camera, right? Like the media that you attach to it isn't as important as you're trying to accomplish one of 3 things when you post on social media. Number 1, trust content. The goal with that is to educate and equip. Okay. So from your purview, from your area of expertise, you want to share tips, tricks, and insights for your audience that they'll find value in, right? So if you're thinking about me, I share a lot about LinkedIn lead generation. I share a lot about building a client acquisition program. I share a lot about B2B marketing, right? Like top of the funnel type stuff that basically people can implement these, snack size strategies in their business on their own. And they'll remember to some extent that I'm the expert that shared that, right? So like that's trust content. We're going to skip over sales content and we'll talk about story content and then we'll come back to sales, right? So story content helps people to like you. Now, think about when you were a kid and you went to the library and your mom dropped you off for story time, right? Like you loved it. When you were a little kid, it was probably the highlight of your week, right? You probably asked to go back to the library because stories, there's something special about a story. And so when we think about that from a business perspective, that story content, it can be client stories. It can be stories from your life, right? Like it can be personal insights, things that you've learned that you want to share with your audience to reveal a little bit more about who you are. One of the things that I like to do is I like to share stories that convey a point, right? So there is all sorts of content that is out there, written and video and otherwise, right? Where people are sharing generalized stories that have a moral. And that content helps people to understand a little bit more about what you stand for. So story content builds likability, and you want to make sure that that's a part of your strategy. And then obviously sales content, right? So sales content is to some extent disguised as trust content, right? So sales content is insightful. It's, hey, if you want to know how to go viral on Instagram, here are the top 5 tips that, I would give you for being able to do that. And then the end of the post is really where your sales hook is. And it says, oh, by the way, we help companies go viral on Instagram. If you want to know more about how we do that, DM me the word viral and, we'll get in touch, right? Like that kind of thing. So you want to focus 80% of the content that you post on trust content and story content, 20% of the content that you post should be sales related.
Wait, say those stats again. I missed them.
Yeah. So 80% of the content that you post should be trust content or story content.
Got it.
20% of your content should actually be sales content, right? And the reason behind that is because, like we talked about at the beginning, everybody likes to buy, but nobody likes to be sold, right? And so from that standpoint, you want people to realize that you're the resident expert in whatever you're the expert of, and that you're the expert in their feed that is consistently sharing things of value, right? And story content helps them to like you, so that when you post sales related stuff 20% of the time, right, then it lands a little bit better than it would if 80% of the time you're posting about sales related stuff and only 20% of the time you're giving back to your audience.
So Jason, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Story, you differentiated between trust and story.
Yep.
And to me, it's just a credible story is a trust building scenario.
Yeah. So I've differentiated between the two because the hair of a difference is that story content, for the purposes of what we're doing, is really about building likability, right? So like when you share a story about how you helped the client and their reaction to how, you know, that made them feel and the success that they saw, right? When you share that, people go, ah, man, I really like JR, man. That's awesome that he did that, right? Like that's super cool.
Never happened.
Versus
all the time, every day, and twice on Saturday, my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we haven't known each other very long, JR, but I can see that. I feel that. I don't know why Joe is like that to you.
Yeah. It's just how Joe is.
The trust content, on the other hand, it builds trust because you're giving away bits and pieces of your strategy, right? So like if you're a digital marketer and you're telling people how to, create more engagement on a social media platform, understandably, you get paid to do that. But when you give away bits of that strategy that people can implement on their own, they start to trust you as a result. Right. So that's why there's the distinction between trust content and story content. But I also agree with you, right? Like a well-laid story does help to build credibility, and that credibility helps people to trust you as well.
Mucho thanks.
Yeah, no worries, man. So, all right. So the last piece of this puzzle, right? So remember that we were talking about like 3 pillars, right? The optimized profile, right? The content that connects, and then messages that matter. Okay. So like we had kind of talked about in the very beginning when we were talking about LinkedIn, one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest issues that we see with people who are trying to use social media to sell is that everything that they do focuses on the sale, right? And like we were talking about, you have to be a giver, you have to provide value. But ultimately, once you're in a position to have a direct conversation with somebody, DM, inbox, right? Then you want to send a message that matters. So let me pose this question to you and the audience, right? If you were at an in-person event, would you vomit your pitch to everybody you met? I'm hoping the answer is no, right? Because I certainly wouldn't, right? Everybody that comes by, everybody that shakes my hand, hey, this is Jason and I sell insurance and I'm hoping that you might need an insurance quote. I'd love to get together with you next week and, that kind of thing, right? Like people are put off by that, right? Now, when you're at an in-person event, maybe you're a little bit more relaxed. Maybe you've had a couple of cocktails and the thing that you're going to do is start a conversation with people. The same should be true on social media via DM and inbox, right? So you need to start conversations. And I'll even give you the very first message that I send almost everybody after they've accepted my connection request, right? So I tend to want to point them back to the content that I create, the content that I've created, right? And I do it like this. Hey, super glad to be connected. I post a lot of content as a CEO and founder to other CEOs and business owners, right? The topics are usually, and these are my topics, sales, B2B marketing, lead generation, right? So they're learnings from working with clients. Are there any hot topics in your business right now, right? So two things typically happen in this scenario, right? The first thing is I'll get a reply to this and somebody will lead me into a conversation that we can have about something that's going on in their business. Or I'll get somebody that basically like doesn't reply, and that's fine because I've got other messages in the sequence that will help kind of lead them to the conversation that we want to have. But at every instance, what I do know is that this is a very soft way for me to get into a conversation with somebody that leads for me to better understand about them, about their business, about their challenges. And when I've done that, I'm in a better position to say, hey, I have about 4 or 5 clients that came to me with the same exact hot topic that you're talking about. Maybe it makes sense for us to have a conversation about how we help them, right? So we're starting conversations, and because we are starting conversations, we're having more relevant conversations. And those relevant conversations lead people further down the funnel.
I have a question. Do you feel like this type of message is equally useful or is the same tactic or whatever when it comes to, because I could totally see this in LinkedIn, but as far as Facebook or Instagram, where those are more casual, is that kind of the same setup?
Yeah, I think so. So I think that the best opportunity, if we're being honest about businesses on Facebook, tends to be related to finding your audience in a group, right? So even if your audience is B2C, they're probably in a group that defines who they are, right? They're a mom, they're a dad, they're a whatever, right? So when we do that, I think that there's a really good opportunity to modify a message like this and say, hey, super glad to be connected. You know, watch the posts that I'm making for stuff about, like if we're in a dad's group, for stuff about I'm doing with my family. Hey, curious to know, you know, what's going on with your family. You know, I'd love to learn and know a little bit more about you, right? Like those kind of things. So straight up B2C, dad to dad, about to hop into a conversation there. The same would be true. And I think this message would translate almost exactly the way it's written. Like if I'm in a group for sales, or if I'm in a group for business owners or founders or whatever, right? Like it's really just about kind of shrinking the circle around that person and helping them to know that you're a real person who wants to have a high level conversation with them that could lead to something.
No, I love it because you could truly plug and play the framework, right? Yeah. So if it is, I'm the dad, right? Hey, I post a lot of content as a husband and father, or as a father, right, to other fathers, right, or parents, right? And then you can come back in and says, are there how many? You could even change it to say, how many children do you have, right? Yeah. You can put in there, I have 27 children. Right. And then, how many kids do you have? Right. And they're going to go, yeah, you don't have a TV at home. I know. Yes. But
Joe, you have 27 grandchildren or children?
Yeah. Neither on both, but
okay.
Yeah. There's only one grandchild in the picture over there. Yes. There's one.
All right. So I've got 2 more slides that'll bring this thing home. Right. So number 1, full transparency. We send potential clients a 5-message sequence, right? And that sequence gets increasingly more specific as more time goes by. So when we create a message sequence, a cadence that's going to go to somebody, we are definitely very general and broad in the very beginning. But by message 4 or 5, our offer, our hook has gotten a little bit more direct, because if they haven't responded up until message 4 or 5, 2 things are true. One, they're not interested. And so why does it matter if I shoot my shot? Might as well, because that might resonate. Or number 2, they're not as active on social media as maybe I am, or maybe you are. And so because of that, I've got a short window to connect with them and get my point across, right? So we send a 5-message sequence to everybody that we connect with that helps us to lead them further into the funnel and potentially book that person as an appointment so that they can hear a little bit more about what we do. So I recommend the same thing for most people, right? Just know that even if you're manually sending messages, right? Like that, if you sent, I don't know, 2 or 3 messages to somebody already and they haven't responded, I would tell you that you can still go a couple more messages deep, because really people don't typically respond in a lot of instances until message 3, message 4, message 5. It has to do with the number of touches it takes to really kind of like influence that person. But the deeper into the sequence you go, obviously, the more specific you should be, the more direct you should be, because you're running out of window of opportunity to get that person flipped into your sales funnel.
Perfect.
Okay. So what we teach, preach, and do, what we've been talking about throughout this entire thing, is what I like to call the ecosystem model, right? So ultimately, there's you creating content, and that content is going to help to connect with, as well as you're manually connecting with, an audience of people that are your ideal customers, right? That audience is either going to engage with your content, or they're going to engage with your messaging. You can see that that's, I don't know, 15, 20%, right? 25% of that larger audience that you targeted. And that's the audience that you're looking to book an appointment with, right? That's the audience that you're looking to have a sales engagement with. So the ecosystem model that works really well in our business and in our clients' businesses is we invite prospects into a world that we've created with an optimized profile, with content, and with targeted messaging. And that's how we end up booking appointments and having sales-related conversations.
I love it. Guys, it's really simple. It's on the screen. What are you doing? I don't know why you guys haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I mean, right? Look, and this is this is something that it sounds simple. It is simple, but what I would also say is part of the challenge for most people is it's a bandwidth issue, right? And we get it. That's why Alpha Brand offers like a fully managed aspect of this service, right? So like if anyone listening to this, or if, whatever, right? Like if we're having this conversation and you're going, hey, everything that we talked about over this, as I'm trying to topple over my microphone, everything that we talked about over the past, hour is great. Like I want to do that, but I just don't have time to do it. Then know that Alpha Brand does that. We can facilitate this within your business to help you have those sales conversations that you're looking for, right? And so I get it. The bandwidth issue is real, which is why we exist, to like circumvent that, right? Like we want to help you get past that, and we'll fully manage a service that allows for you to have this in your business without having to do it yourself.
So how do people engage with you on this?
Yeah. So couple of things. Number one, exclusively for War Games Group listeners, right? Sales Genius listeners. I would love if you guys would send me an email, right? If you'll send me an email to hello@alphabrandadvisory.com. You can also go to the website that's been scrolling down at the bottom. And if you will do that, I have got some free resources for you that I'd love to put in your hands, right? Our content planner. So we've been talking about content. You need to post more content, right? How do you keep all of that organized? I've got a content planner that I've created in Notion that I can share with anybody that wants it. Attached to that content planner is my ultimate hook book. So it is 40 formulas for hooks that you can use that will help people like lock on to your posts a little bit easier, right? So I've got an ultimate hook book that we've created that is going to be, packaged in with that content planner. And then we were talking about that framework. We talked about know, like, and trust and story posts and all of that stuff. I call that the Alpha Personal Content Framework. And so that Alpha Personal Content Framework is also free and attached within the freebies that we put together for you. So if your audience, if anybody who's interested will send an email with WGG in the subject line and just tell me a little bit about you and your business, that would be awesome. Or you can go to the website and you can do the same thing, right? Click on contact us. There's a form there. Punch in your info. Just let me know that you heard us on WGG and tell me a little bit about your business and we'll get you hooked up, right? So, man, Joe has also really hooked me up from the standpoint of like my LinkedIn was in there. He's posting my email. He's doing all this different stuff, man. So that is the best way to connect with me. And then what we do, right? So if we're providing this service for somebody, that's not attached to all the freebies. I will try and sell you that. But if you're working with us on this service, it all starts with kind of outlining what your goals are. Most of the time people come to us because they don't have a consistent lead flow and they're looking to increase the number of leads that they have the ability to connect with, right? They want more leads. They want more appointments. They want to have more sales conversations. And so we'll talk about what's important to their business. We'll talk about their unique selling proposition. We'll talk about how they differentiate in their ideal customer. And then we'll build a content plan and strategy. We'll post that content on a consistent basis. We have an account manager that will work with them as the figurehead of their campaign. That's how we kind of pull it all together. So we automate the outreach. We have a human that creates human-to-human contact, right? And then ultimately, we will book an appointment onto the calendar for anybody who's interested, right? So like that's kind of the whole soup to nuts. That's what we do. And that's how we make it fully managed. But yeah, hopefully that's valuable to somebody who needs it.
Wow, you still work with humans. That's really amazing.
Yeah,
old school.
I've heard about those.
I haven't
Not a
found
fan.
AI.
Not a fan. Yeah.
I
Super
haven't
unpredictable.
found an AI that can have a conversation in the way that the account managers typically can, right? So, that's the reason why I think that sometimes when people figure out that there's an AI on the other end, they feel duped. Whereas when there's not an AI on the other end and they can be like, yeah, this is me and this is who I am, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, that feels good. It's probably been a person the whole time, even though there's been a good portion of it that was automated on the front end. So
the stat is like 74% of the people are okay with AI if you tell them up front.
okay.
Right? So that's because I have clients where we have AI answer telephones. And so it's an AI, you go, oh, would you like to schedule an appointment? Press this to talk to our AI appointment setter. So that way you're not freaked if the voice doesn't sound completely natural or it stays on its own script. But again, if you're not telling them that it's AI, then the betrayal factor comes in. But I love that, Alpha Brand Advisory does all of this because this is my note page and I already got scared, right? I was like, man, look at all this stuff I got to do. But it's still great information. I love it. I've already got my Ghostwriter GPT up because I already had my business partner GPT write me my customer narrative. So that came out. And then I copy that, put it in Ghostwriter so it sounds like me. So I'm ready to paste this thing in. I am ready to go. I'm like, let's get this done.
I love it. I'm going to be watching for it now, Joe. Look, you connected with me ahead of this, man. So I'm going to be looking for it now.
I did. It's going to be there. So let me just recap a couple things, right? Break everything up into a 90-day program. Okay, that's what he was saying. Go break up everything into a 90-day program because you can change everything in 90 days. So stop, redefine what you want. and let's build it out and just rush for 90 days. Everybody can do it for 90 days. We're good, right? And then you're going to go down video on LinkedIn. Look at Fiona's there. So we're good. When you look at it, we're going to go out video on LinkedIn. It's getting there. Now, I will tell you, Brian and I, we are all video on LinkedIn, right? So now we got to go back to the other thing. I'm excited to start putting some information on a video slide so it looks static at the same time, so we can trick the algorithm into getting it out there. So it is fun because you always have to find people to run with. Like Brian and I send the weekly status updates from LinkedIn on how many views and engagements and stuff like that. So we're both screenshotting it off of the app and sending it to each other to say what worked, what didn't, right? And go through. So so words on a B-roll is the note I took, right? You got to go for profile. You have to have content that connects and your messaging. So you're going for profile, content, connection, right? Yeah. And all three of those should validate, right? The connection part, once you reach out to somebody, the profile and content should be helping them through that. I need to have 7 touch points before I start to begin to trust somebody. Yeah. And so if you think of it that way, when you go to build your profile, it should be there. Your profile needs to tell you who, what do you do, and who do you work with, which I liked about that one. Stop doing your about me bragging section for LinkedIn and go put in a consumer narrative, right? Are you, something along that, because what I've been there, this is how we solve it with this framework, right? And then go through, and I was sketching down fun, engaging, training, AI, stuff like that. You got to split up your posts on social media for 80%, which is going to be story or trust. Okay. And then 20% is you pitching who you are and what call to action you wanted them to do. Right. And then you had mentioned you do a 5-message sequence when you reach out to people, 3 generic, and then 4 and 5 become more specific. And then after all that, and you go, dang, that was a lot of information he just dropped, and you say it was fantastic, but I don't want to do it. Then you reach out, send an email to hello@alphabrandadvisory.com, put WGG for the War Games Group in the subject line, and get yourself some free stuff, content planner, all that stuff that he put out for you.
Yes.
That was a lot. That was a lot.
And I know what everyone's thinking. I know everyone's thinking, oh my God, I could never afford this. Like Jason, he's so smart. Alpha Brand is way too expensive. Not true. I know this for a fact. It's a lot less than you're thinking, and it's a lot more valuable than you can possibly imagine. So you have to check it out.
Especially if you guys are stopping to think and go, well, how many customers do I need to offset an investment with myself? And if you're going to go and say, well, I sell $47 items, yeah, it's going to take you a long ass time.
Yeah.
All right. But again, why are you trying to make your money off of a $47 product?
Yeah.
Right. That's going to be a lot of volume to get done. Hopefully it's digital, because you don't need that kind of drama.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. That's a whole other masterclass, right? Like how to flip your $47 sales whatever into a high ticket sale, right? Like
yeah. And the 200 steps in between, and understand your $47 client is the one demanding more of your time than the $5,000 client, right? Yeah. The $5,000 client goes, hey man, payment sent. Let me know what we do next. Right. And the $47 ones, like, there was only 27 pages on this ebook. I feel like I got ripped off. and I expect to have like 4 meetings with you a month instead of the 1. Yes. So, but that's
the first
fantastic.
Step is stop what you're doing.
Any other questions? Anybody on the screen with us here today? We had a lot of people over on Instagram. I don't know if you guys know this. So it never shows it on Instagram, but there's like 60 people going through Instagram. It doesn't actually show you on this. For some reason, it shows one social media platform is the only thing it picks. And one of these days, I'm going to decide which one I click on first to see which one is it.
Yeah, but I thought you still couldn't see Instagram because you have to go hit live event after you're going, right? So I don't through what we use, I don't think you can keep up with your. I do the same thing. I have to keep another window open. I leave over to the side and go,
Yeah.
what's going on Instagram?
Yeah, that's me. It's another tab, and I'm like, okay, whoop, and I'm looking. I'm like, Malaysia was on, Iman was on, right? You've got all these people. Real Nick Mershon was on for a while. I had Johanna Kaivan, right? All these people, and I'm like, okay, Julio's on, right? And Greg Walker's on. All these people are on the screen, but it doesn't show on the view count that's here, and so I don't know which one is it. Looking at LinkedIn? Is it looking at the Facebook or the YouTube, or I have no idea whatever StreamYard does. But so fantastic. No other questions. I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody that's here, go out and sell something. All right, because that's what we do.